I haven't even played Death Stranding and Cyberpunk 2077 yet, which I'm sure would make this list had I done so, but I'm waiting for when they're cheaper and fixed. Here are the top 10 video game narratives that I played in 2020. At number 10, we have The Longing, which is a really interesting indie game which was released in March 2020. You play Shade, a servant of a great king that has fallen asleep for 400 days. You have to wait in real life for 400 days to complete this game, and you're also advised not to leave the cave and to return to wake up the king. So as you can guess, I haven't finished the game yet, but some people have, because when you read books which you find in-game, it speeds up the time. I actually read the entirety of Fahrenheit 451 inside this game, and it was really nice to have a companion that was reading the book with me. It was strange, every time I had to turn off the computer, I'd come back and he would be like my bookmark, and he makes little comments on how he's enjoying the book as well. As you explore the caves, you find all kinds of objects, you find a few insects that you talk to, and it's a really nice experience, very minimalist, but it still feels like this journey, this big story, and Shade has many thoughts about life that come out, so it's almost like a philosophical story. This game feels very much like the isolation of reading Moby Dick or Walden. At number 9 we have Late Shift, which is an interactive movie where you play a British university student who gets caught up in a big crime syndicate. It's an hour long and you'll probably play it twice, but it can be really frustrating to know what's going to happen in the narrative. I'd wait until it's on sale, but it's better than watching a movie or reading a book with your partner. This game feels like any kind of thriller with continuous plot turns, which sadly I don't tend to read many of these thrillers. The best I could compare it to is The Man Who Was Thursday by G.K. Chesterton, but without the humor and the wit. At number 8 we have Undertale, which is a classic indie game that subverted the need to kill characters in RPGs. And it has excellent characters, but the story after a while feels a bit empty, lonely and silly, and the ending as a narrative is downright terrible. This game feels like reading Breakfast of Champions by Kurt Vonnegut, or a kid-friendly version of Another Roadside Attraction by Tom Robbins, although there is quite a sad beginning, which puts it apart from these books. At number 7 we have That Dragon Cancer, which is the game you want to play if you wanted to cry about something that isn't your own life for once. It's a game made by one person, a father that lost their child to cancer, and it has a lot of the recordings from the actual child, so it's very, very personal. As a creative work, it's very powerful and it plays like poetry and you finish it in one sitting. But some people will dislike the religious symbolism that crops up towards the end. That Dragon Cancer feels very much like reading Mother Come Home by Paul Hornschmeyer. At number 6 we have This War of Mine, which got me through the darker phases of the pandemic. I really felt bad with the struggles of these 2D characters surviving famine and thieves. It's hard at first and can be upsetting when you lose, but if you keep at it, you find a strategy, you can find quite rewarding endings. Don't buy the DLCs, their narratives are fixed and depressing. No matter how hard you try, you will be punished. This War of Mine is a game that feels very much like reading Cormac McCarthy's The Road. At number 5 we have Paratopic, which is a game I'm sure you've never heard of. This is where the list gets weird. So Paratopic is a low poly nightmare of an indie game that really reminds me of David Lynch's Mulholland Drive. Given film critics think that this might be one of the best films of all time, it shows that strong surreal horror narratives don't really need good graphics. I got more chills out of this game than any horror game I've played for a long time. It's very interesting and enigmatic, and people are still trying to figure out exactly what it all means. Paratopic as a game has the paranoia of Thomas Pynchon's work and the violence of Yukio Mishima's work, so it would be something between those two authors. At number 4 we have The Mercury Man, which is a game that seems pretty much unknown outside of Russia. The Mercury Man is like Max Payne with a Hotline Miami aesthetic in Russia and quite a low budget. While the controls are terrible and the gameplay is brutally hard, once you get through the tutorial the game is really, really enjoyable. In The Mercury Man you play a detective who has recently lost his wife, who is trying to track down people using a drug which makes them invincible but deadly contagious to the general population. It's a really cool science fiction plot, and the game is quite emotional. I really wish a big developer would pick up this game. This was made by a solo developer at Mesoft, and the soundtrack is really cool. The Mercury Man feels like reading Flow My Tears, the Policeman Said by Philip K. Dick. At number 3 we have Fallout New Vegas, which I recently replayed to experience the DLCs that I missed before. I added the Delilah mod on PC, which was way better than all the DLCs combined. Delilah really adds to the story because she feels like a companion. She has so many lines, and you're also looking for books. It felt like I was actually talking to someone about books, and it made me realize there are some great novels I haven't read yet, including Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, The Grapes of Wrath, Ender's Game, Flowers for Algernon. Playing Fallout New Vegas feels like reading Life of Pi by Jan Martel because you're completely lost as an explorer. At number 2 we have the classic Deus Ex. I played Deus Ex Revisions on Steam, which is the only way to get it running on modern computers. I now understand the hype about the original Deus Ex and Warren Spector's views on how game narratives should really shape game design. There's so much room for emergent gameplay in this conspiracy-filled cyberpunk thrilling game. Deus Ex is about a government conspiracy to control a vaccine to a viral pandemic, which was very chilling to play during the COVID-19 pandemic. While later installations of Deus Ex are cooler looking, they don't have this level of story. I can't remember the last time a game dropped so many conspiracy theories about the government. This game feels like reading Neuromancer by William Gibson. At number 1 we have an absolute masterpiece, Disco Elysium, a text-based RPG adventure detective game which has so many psychological elements that it's hard to unpack. There's more than a book here in character dialogue, and the soundtrack and plot are really amazing. When I read conventional detective novels like those from Arthur Conan Doyle, Raymond Chandler, James M. Cain, I just don't have a psychological connection to the characters like I do in Disco Elysium. There is so much more depth here that the film noir genre has that books just can't seem to do right. Film and games are so much better at doing detective stories. This game is based on The City and City by China Miéville, which I still haven't read, but I'm planning on getting to soon. And there's the list, so if you want an interesting game story, look no further. Happy gaming.